Hi everyone, welcome back to your mat. Welcome to this practice. This is our third and final practice in this holiday series, and this one is a restorative yoga class. So I find it super important, especially in this time of year during the fall and the winter seasons, that we slow down and get really intentional with our movement. Everything can kind of pull us and make us busy, and we're rushing to holiday parties or trying to get all the shopping done or whatever it is that is pulling at you. We need to remember to find rest and relaxation and reflection. So that's what this practice is about today. We're going to be doing a yin yoga practice where we will hold the postures for anywhere between 1.5 minutes to 3 minutes. So I want you to really tune into your practice today. I have a block, so we will use that in a few of the poses if you want it. It's not totally necessary, but it is super helpful. But we're going to start our practice with a guided meditation, and then we'll move into our yin practice and then finish with a winter solstice reading. So I want you to really open yourself up here for rest, for rejuvenation, and for just a time to tune inward. So let's go ahead and get started. So like I mentioned, we're going to start our practice with a short guided meditation. And so whatever that feels like for you, if you want to stay seated in a comfortable seated position, you can stay seated. You could lie down on your mat, bend the knees, keep the feet flat. Whatever position that makes your body the most comfortable for this guided meditation, I want you to find that now and allow yourself to just listen to the sound of my voice as it guides you through this meditation to start our practice.
This is a winter solstice meditation written by Reverend Uki McIsaac. Let's begin by taking a deep breath in and then exhaling slowly. Relax as you release the breath. With each breath you take, you move deeper into the silent space within, into your inner world. Imagine yourself now walking through a desert landscape at night. The moon is not visible to light your path, and at first your steps are unsure and tentative. The more you attune yourself to the silent world around you, the more your senses begin to perceive details along your path. The desert air is clear and cold, fragrant with the aroma of sage. Now you move with confidence. You can see with your inner eyes. You are comfortable with the darkness that reveals its gifts. You can hear sounds of life around you. What do you hear? You see things you have not seen before. What do you see? You trust your inner senses. Your intuition guides you on your path. Answers reveal themselves as you surrender to the power of the unseen. You feel safe and protected. A warm feeling starts to bubble up in your solar plexus. The warmth spreads to your arms and legs, to your whole body. A pleasant tingling sensation accompanies the warm glow that now seems to emanate from your body, creating a field of pleasant, vibrating energy throughout and around you. The source of light and warmth is within, always accessible, your internal sun. You are equally comfortable with the dark as with the light. You are balanced, in harmony with Mother Earth and Father Sky. As you turn your eyes toward the night sky above you, a blanket of brilliant stars illuminate the sky. Gratitude washes over you as you open your heart to the beauty of this sacred time and space. A granite boulder offers a place to rest and relax. Hours seem like minutes. A sense of timelessness prevails. Yet, almost imperceptibly at first, you notice a change on the horizon. The light of the stars begins to fade, and toward the east, the first light of dawn colors the sky with shades of purple, pink, and orange. Slowly, the landscape around you reveals a new face of beauty and harmony. Soon, the radiant disk of the sun appears and bathes the desert in its warm glow. You are reborn to this new day, and you greet it with joy and gratitude. You can trust the sacred circles of nature that always offer new beginnings. Bless the return of the light as you have blessed the womb of darkness that preceded it. With your next deep breath, slowly begin to bring your awareness back to the here and now. Feel yourself grounded, balanced, and in harmony. When you are ready, you may open your eyes, fully back in the here and now, bringing with you the gifts of this sacred journey. And so it is.
Now we're going to gently move into our yin yoga practice. So let's all come to a comfortable seated position. Again, any way that feels good. The legs can be crossed, they could be extended out, butterfly pose. Again, any way that feels comfortable. If you have a blanket and you want to sit up on your blanket and just kind of tilt the pelvis a bit, that can be comfortable. But we're going to start our practice just softening some tension through the neck. So we're going to roll those shoulders down and gently drop the right ear towards the right shoulder. Now, remember, in a yin yoga practice, we are not going to our edge. So we're not going to like a 10 on our scale of stretch. We want to be somewhere in the middle, about a 5, a 6. So we're just gently stretching the side of the neck here. We can close the eyes. Again, this is a really introspective practice. So, as we get into these postures, I will remain quiet. Your job is to just focus on the breath, inhaling and exhaling, acknowledging any thoughts, and then letting them go as we hold in these poses. Now, before we switch sides, you can keep the eyes closed or we can open them. We're just going to gently move the chin down. Find a little bit of movement for the neck, and we'll come back to center. And now we can tuck the chin, turn the head side to side. Again, just gentle, slow movements here. And then we'll come into the other side. So back to center. Let's gently drop the left ear towards the left shoulder. We can again close the eyes. Go only as far as feels comfortable for you. And again, we're not pushing too far, we're just adding some gentle movement to open up the space through the neck. And let's gently tuck the chin, turn the chin towards the shoulder. Again, find any movement that we need to, turning the head, maybe looking up towards the sky, taking some circles for the neck. Again, moving slowly, moving intentionally. Okay, let's come back through center. All right, we're gonna move into the side body. So here I'm gonna use my block. Again, this is just gonna help me not move too deep into the posture. And we're gonna start by hinging over towards the right side. So I'm gonna take the right hand on my block. The left arm is gonna lift up to the sky, soften that shoulder, and then we're gonna hinge to the side. Now I can keep my hand on my block, or I can bring my forearm down to the block. And you have a couple options for the head. We can look down towards the floor to feel a little bit more grounded, or we can look up towards the sky or anywhere in between. We want to try to keep the hips grounded here. So really press down through that left hip. Again, if this is too much of a stretch, again, we're only working at about a 5 or a 6. We can come up to the hand. We can even move that block out a little bit. Any way that feels good for your side body, we're going to stretch all along the side. So let's take a few deep breaths here as we settle into this side body stretch, creating some space along the spine. Taking big deep breaths here again, maybe closing the eyes. Let's gently press ourselves up through center. Now, before we transition sides, we're going to do a couple cat and cow poses seated here. So hands can come to our knees. We'll lift up, lift the chin, open up the chest. Exhale, round the spine, tuck the chin. And then you just move with your breath here. Here, we're not going to hold, we're going to flow and find some movement. That's the beauty of a yin yoga practice, is when we release out of the poses and we find this movement, we can get that energy flowing into the body. So let's go ahead and transition into the other side. I'm going to move that block on the other side. So this time it's going to come under the left hand. Again, this can be up, it could be down, it could walk away, come out to the forearm, whatever works for this side of the body. We're going to sweep that right arm up. This time we're stretching through that right side, pressing that right hip down to the floor. Again, taking the gaze down or maybe up towards the sky. Any way that feels good. Try to soften the shoulders. And then try to release any tension through the hips. So sometimes when we're sitting in this cross-legged position, we can grip into that hip joint. And we want to just try to soften the tension there. Take some big, deep cleansing breaths. And then we'll allow ourselves to hold and find stillness here in this side body stretch. Let's take one more breath here. And then gently press ourselves all the way up. Again, moving into those cat and cow poses. Hands to the knees, we'll lift up. Exhale, round, sink back towards the tailbone. Inhale, lift and open. Exhale, round. Inhale and exhale. Good. All right, so we are going to come into a wide-legged forward fold, seated here on our mat. So we're going to open up the legs. You can turn long ways on your mat if you'd like. But we're going to open those feet up. And again, I'm going to use my block in the center here. And yet this is really about releasing any built-up tension in the body. So we can store that again, like we open the sides of the body, we store that in the neck and the shoulders. So we're trying to open all these spaces so that we can allow ourselves to find this bit of rest and relaxation. So with the legs open, again, this is only as far as feels comfortable for you. There can be a shorter V, a wide V, whatever feels good. We're going to walk our hands to the floor or our block. We could again come down to the forearms, but our goal here again is about a 5 or a 6. We're not pushing to that ultimate edge, laying out on the floor, pulling and creating tension in the muscles. We should feel like we're gently stretching them, but after about 20 seconds or so, those muscles should soften and we can get into the deeper layers, into the fascia, into the tendons, the joints, the ligaments a little bit, and kind of move out of that muscle space. So find the position that feels good for you. Soften the shoulders, maybe close the eyes. And again, we're just going to tune inward. So take those big, deep breaths and allow yourself to just melt into this wide leg forward fold. Let's take one more breath here. And our next inhale, we're going to gently walk those hands up. And we're going to very slowly bring the legs together. So I'm going to move that block off to the side, shake the legs out as we bring them together. And we're going to transition into our tabletop pose. So we're going to come onto our hands and our knees. And as we come into this tabletop, this is really just like a transition for us to move into a different set of poses. So from this tabletop, we're going to move in our cat and cow pose. So wrists under the shoulders, knees under the hips. We're going to inhale, lift and lengthen through the spine. Exhale, tuck the tail, tuck the chin. And then move here with the breath. Inhale, lift and lengthen. Exhale, round and stretch. And you can move in any way that feels good. So we can continue cat and cow, or we can look over the shoulders, wiggle the hips, shift back and forward a little bit. Any movement that feels good. And then let's move into our next hold, our next yin posture. And that is going to be a wide-legged child's or a wide-knee child's pose. So we're going to open the knees up, bring the toes together, sit the hips back towards the heels. And again, I'm going to grab my block for this one just to bring the floor a little bit closer. And we're working on restoring the body. So I'm going to place the forehead down on my block, softly come down to the forearms, and then again, focus on our breath. So let's find our child's pose position that feels good to hold. Now, if we have a blanket and we want to place that behind the backs of the knees, that can feel good, or even underneath the ankles feels really nice. So again, choose the option that feels best in your body, adjusting any way that we need to. And then taking those big, deep cleansing breaths in and out through the nose. Allowing ourselves to settle into our child's pose. And this is a really great pose to tune inward and really focus on what our body and our minds need. So let's take a moment to just acknowledge those things, but then again, let them go. We don't want to hold on to any one specific thing. We just want to naturally let the mind do its job, kind of wander a little bit, but then bring our attention back into this pose. Let's take one more breath here. And then gently press ourselves back up into that tabletop position. Bring the knees back under the hips. Again, we can move the hips a bit. Cat and cow pose. Maybe you can go into a downward facing dog and pedal the heels if that feels good. We can tuck the toes, shift those hips back. Again, any movement that your body is asking of you. So don't be afraid to move in any specific way. Just find some movement that feels good for your body. And now let's come into our next posture. So this is going to be a stretch for the feet. So we're kind of working our way down the body here. We're going to tuck the toes under and come into our toes pose. Now again, there's a lot of variations of this. So tucking the toes here, this might be our 5 or 6. That's okay. We can also sit the hips back and get a little bit more sensation through the toes and the bottoms of the feet. We can walk the hands up to our block, or we can come all the way up onto the heels. Now again, for me, this is a lot of pressure. This is like an 8 on my scale. So I'm gonna come back down to my block, have a little bit of pressure. We're not gonna hold this one for a super long amount of time, but we're just getting a good stretch for the toes, for the bottoms of the feet, showing our feet some love. They carry us through this world. So we've got to make sure we are sending the love down to our feet as well. So try to soften the tension through the shoulders. We can stay on that block. I think I might even come down to the forearms a bit. Take some pressure out of the shoulders. Again, we're all about creating the space that we need in our body, but trying not to push those limits too far. We do that enough on a daily basis in our yoga practice. We're not pushing limits. We are just honoring our body and giving it the attention and the care and the love that it needs. So let's take a few more deep breaths here as we hold in this toes pose. Let's take one more breath here. And then we're going to gently shift forward, release the tuck of the toes. We can come back to that tabletop position with the hands down, and then just tap the toes on the mat. Get that blood flow back into the tops of the feet and the toes. Again, we can do a downward facing dog and pedal the heels. You can just kind of roll those toes and wiggle them a little bit. Move the hips. Again, any movement that our body needs before we adjust into our next yin posture. Good. All right, let's come back up onto the knees. Our next pose is going to be a lunge. So we're going to take the right leg forward to start, and we're going to stay in this kneeling lunge. So if we need a little extra cushion, we can roll up the mat. If you have a blanket, you can put the blanket under the knee. Now I'm going to give you a couple options for this kneeling lunge. Again, we can stay lifted upright here and just shift those hips forward, opening up the hip flexor. We could walk that right foot out to the edge of the mat, let the knee fall open as we bring our hands down to a block or the floor. And we could also come down to the forearms on the block or the floor. And we want to be at that 5 or 6, so not pushing at the edge of our limits here in this lunge. So really just kind of letting yourself settle into this dragon lunge, softening the shoulders, taking some big deep breaths. Let's take one more breath here. And then we're going to gently shift the hips back, moving nice and slow. Bring that right foot back to the center of the mat. We can shift back and a little stretch for the hamstring. And maybe just find some movement rocking forward and back. Now we're going to transition to the other side, but when we're ready, so make sure we find enough movement that feels good. We're going to circle that right leg back. We're going to come back into that tabletop. We'll come up to our knees, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So left leg will step forward. Again, we can stay upright, lifting up through the chest and just kind of shifting forward. This might be enough of a hip flexor stretch for us, and that's a great place to stay. You can soften the shoulders. We can again walk that left foot out to the edge of the mat, let the knee fall open, and bring our hands down to the floor or our block. Again, adjust into your kneeling lunge in any way that feels good for your body, but try to find a place that you can hold and then find stillness. So we don't want to be coming into this lunge and then after about 10 seconds adjusting. Every time we move and adjust, the muscles kind of like kick back on. So we want to make sure that we're allowing those muscles to soften. And so we have to kind of stay still in that position, which is why I want you to find your 5 or 6 and then hold there. So we'll take a few more deep breaths here as we settle into this lunge. Let's take one more breath here. And then gently shift the hips back. Bring that left leg center. And again, find any movement that feels good for us. Shifting forward and then shifting back. And then we're going to circle that leg back. Come back to that tabletop. Move the hips. Cat and cow pose. Good. All right, we are going to come onto our bellies now. So let's move that block out of the way. Come all the way down to the floor. Stack the hands. Rest the forehead on the hands. Let's find belly rest for just a moment. We can wiggle the hips a bit side to side. Just really try to settle ourselves in our place on our mat. And now we're going to come into our Sphinx pose. So we're going to come up onto the elbows. Now here, we want to keep the elbows directly under the shoulders or slightly forward. So that way we've got enough space for the spine and we're not putting too much pressure into the front of our shoulder joint. So arms are going to be in front of us, fingers spread nice and wide. We're going to lift up through the chest, lift the head. Now we can use our block here and place that block underneath the forehead if we want to just work the lower extension of our spine, or we can lift the head up and kind of take that extension a little bit further. So you choose whichever option works for your body, and we'll hold in this Sphinx pose, pressing the hips down, squeezing the glutes, pressing the legs down. And if we want more sensation, we can come into our seal pose where we lift the elbows up. Now again, 5 or 6. So if this puts you at a 7, 8, or 9, we come back down to the forearms and we hold here. Then we can close our eyes. Bring that attention inward, and with each breath, let's really feel the belly pressing down towards the floor. Let's take one more breath here. And then gently release. Come back to that belly rest where we stack the hands, rest the forehead on the hands, and find some movement, wiggling the hips. We can bend the knees and windshield wiper the feet side to side. And then we'll release the legs. We're going to find some rest here in our half frog pose. So from this position on our bellies, we're going to bring one leg at a time out to the side. So we'll start with the left leg. The left knee is going to come right to hip height, and then we're going to open the foot. We can stay on the forearms with the forehead down. We can turn our cheek to one side and find rest here. Again, whatever way feels best in your body, we're just gently opening up the inside of the hip in this more restorative frog pose. Let's take one more breath here. And then we're going to gently walk that leg back. Wiggle a bit, move into the hips. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we'll bring that right knee to hip height, open that right foot a little bit wider than the knee. And again, find a position for the head that feels good. And just allow yourself to melt here into this frog pose on this side of the body. Let's take one more breath here. Gently bring that leg back. Again, we'll move a bit. And then we're going to press back into our tabletop pose. So hands under the shoulders, press up onto the knees, walk those hands back. Okay, now before we kind of roll over and do a few poses on our back, we're going to come into our pigeon pose. So we've opened up the front side of the hips. We've got that hip flexor. Now we're going to work the glutes. So we're going to walk those hands forward a bit. We're going to bring the right knee behind the right wrist. Open the ankle up a bit. Walk that left leg back. Now here we can stay on the hands. We can bring the forearms to our block. We can relax, rest the forehead down. We can again use that block underneath the forehead if that feels good. But we're working into that right glute muscle and the right hip, the outside of the hip. So again, settle through the shoulders, maybe close the eyes. We'll take some deep breaths here as we settle into our pigeon pose on this side. Let's take one more breath here. Gently press ourselves up. We're going to go back to that tabletop. So we're going to walk that back leg in, shift the right leg back, move those hips. Again, we can do cat and cow pose, shift forward and back. We can come into our downward dog, pedal the heels, shake out the leg, whatever feels good. So again, this is really about just intentional movement in your body. And then we're going to switch sides. We'll do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to bring left knee behind the left wrist, open up the left ankle, walk that right leg back until we're settled. Now we want to stay right in the center of our mat. So if we notice that we're kind of leaning off to the side, we want to bring that leg in a bit. We can take our block and place it underneath that back hip. Whatever feels good. Again, we want to make sure that our body feels comfortable so that we're not holding tension. So find your pigeon pose that feels good in your body. And if this is too much on the knees, we can always lay over on our back and do the figure 4 stretch. So again, make this fit for your body. Soften the shoulders, close the eyes, find those deep breaths, and allow yourself to settle. Let's take one more deep breath here. We're going to gently walk ourselves back up, back into our tabletop. Move those hips, shift forward and back, maybe go back into our downward dog. Shake out that left leg. And then we're going to circle the legs all the way around so that we can come onto our backs. So we are almost through our practice today. So we are going to lay all the way down on our back and come into our bridge pose. Now we're going to use the block in our bridge, so turn it into a more restorative bridge, but we're going to flow first. So have your block close by so that we can use it under the hips. But once we get down to the floor, we're going to give those knees a hug, maybe rock a bit side to side. And then we're going to drop those feet down. I'm going to move the block off to the side somewhere I can grab it in a minute, but we're going to come into a bridge flow first. So we're going to walk those heels towards the body, arms down by our side. On our inhale, we're going to press the hips up towards the sky. Exhale, gently lower back down to the ground. Inhale again, lift the hips up. Exhale, lower. Let's do that a few more times. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. 2 more. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Now this time as we lift the hips up, we're going to grab our block and slide it underneath the glutes. Now I'm going to place it on its widest edge just so it's not too high. And this is going to go right under the tailbone, right under the glutes. We don't want to put it too high on the lower back because that just adds a little unnecessary pressure there. If at any point this is uncomfortable to hold, we can just come into a constructive rest with the hips down on our mat. Now, once we get into this position, we can hang out right here with the feet grounded in this restorative bridge pose. Or we can extend the legs out, maybe one at a time, if that feels good. Or we can hold the block, bring the knees in, and lift the legs up towards the sky for a supported shoulder stand. Now we're going to hold for about 2 minutes. So if you are extending one leg at a time, I will let you know when we get halfway so that you can switch the legs and make sure that we're even. Let's take one more breath here. And then we'll switch legs, or we can change positions, or we can stay and hold. So we've got one more minute. Go ahead and switch if you have the legs extended. And again, find that place to settle and hold for one more minute. Let's take one more breath here. Gently bring both feet in. We're going to press the hips up off of our block, slide it out from underneath us. Gently come down to the floor and then windshield wiper those knees side to side. And before we move into our last pose, we're going to do a little spinal twist. We're going to shift those hips over to the right side of our mat as we let the knees drop to the left. Open the arms into a T or cactus arms. And again, just take a few deep breaths here. We're not going to hold for a really long amount of time, but we're just going to get some rotation into the spine. You can close the eyes, take big deep breaths here. Let's take one more breath. Gently bring the legs back to the center, hands back to the belly. We're going to shift the hips to the center of the mat first, and then we'll lift the hips and move them over to the left so the knees can drop to the right. And again, open those arms back up. Find our spinal twist on this side. Take some big deep breaths and then just settle here. Let's go ahead and inhale, bring the legs back through center. Shift the hips back to the center of the mat. Our last hold is going to be our butterfly pose here. So we're going to bring the soles of the feet together, let the knees open. Hands can rest on the belly. They could come underneath the glutes for a little support. They could open up by our side, whatever feels best for our body. Now again, we're going to hold here for about a minute and a half, so not too long, but just take some big deep breaths. If this gets to be too much and we start to feel that lower back arching off the floor, we can either support under the legs with our blocks or pillows, or we can just come back into that constructive rest. We don't want to cause too much tension on that lower back. So we'll take a few deep breaths here as we just let our body settle. Let's take one more deep breath. Gently bring the hands to the legs, close the legs. Windshield wiper those knees one more time. And then let's bring the knees in. Give our knees a great big hug. Maybe rock a bit side to side, and then we'll pull the forehead up towards the knees and then gently release, coming into our place of rest and relaxation, into our Shavasana. That can be with the feet flat, knees bent. We can extend the legs to the corners of the mat. Arms can come down by our side. If it was comfortable to lay on our belly in that belly rest, we can always turn over onto our belly as well. Any position for your body that is comfortable. I'm going to come to a seated position so I can talk you through our body scan. But again, just allow yourself to get 10% more comfortable wherever you are on your mat. Let's take a big, deep breath and exhale, settle into your place of rest and relaxation. Let's take a big, deep breath in, and with each exhale, begin to release the places of the body as I mentioned them. Softening through the toes, the bottoms and the tops of the feet. Releasing any tension through the ankles, the calves, and the shins. Softening through the knees and the thighs. Allowing the hips to soften. Noticing the gentle rise and fall of our belly and our chest with each breath. Letting the shoulders melt down into the floor. Softening through the arms, the hands, and the fingers. Releasing any tension through the neck and the jaws. Letting the tongue fall away from the roof of the mouth. Softening the muscles of the face and the corners of the eyes. And lastly, the mind. Acknowledge any thoughts and then let them go. Allow yourself to be here in this place of rest and relaxation for the next few minutes. Now let's gently begin to wake the body, wiggling fingers and wiggling toes, bringing our awareness back to our place on our mat and our place in the room, gently guiding ourselves back up to a comfortable seated position. But take your time getting there. You can hug the knees and then roll to one side. Maybe just rock and roll and come to seated any way that feels good. So we've taken this time to find rest and relaxation and just this little bit of slower movement today. So don't go fast here. Take your time. There's no rush. Take a few deep breaths, and then when you're ready, you can meet us in a comfortable seated position. Once we get to our seated position, we'll bring the hands to the knees, roll the shoulders up towards our ears and then down our back. Gently tuck the chin. We can close the eyes, bring hands together at heart center. Noticing this connection that we have with ourselves in this moment, in this season, and show ourselves love and gratitude for being here in our practice. I like to end each practice with a quote or a reading. This one is about the winter solstice. It says, "The winter solstice time is no longer celebrated as it once was, with the understanding that this is a period of descent and rest, of going within our homes, within ourselves, and taking in all that we have been through, all that has passed in this full year, which is coming to a close. Like nature and the animal kingdom around us, this time of hibernation is so necessary for our tired limbs, our burdened minds. Our modern culture teaches avoidance at a max at this time through alcohol, lights, shopping, overworking, overspending, comforts, food, and consumerism. And yet, the natural tug to go inward, as nearly all creatures are doing, is strong. And the weather is so bitter that people are left feeling that winter is hard. Because for those of us without burning fires and big festive families, it can be lonely and isolating. Whereas, in actual fact, winter is kind. She points us in her quiet, soft way towards our inner self, towards this annual time of peace and reflection, embracing the darkness and forgiving, accepting, and loving, embracing goodbye to the past year. Winter takes away the distractions, the buzz, and presents us with the perfect time to rest and withdraw into a womb like love, bringing fire and light to our hearth. And then, just around the corner, the new year will begin again. And like a seed planted deep in the earth, we will all rise with renewed energy once again to dance in the sunlight. Life is a gift. Happy winter to you all. Let's take one more breath together, inhaling in peace, joy, and love, and exhaling anything that no longer serves us. The light in me honors and is grateful for the light in you. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me in this holiday series. I hope that you enjoyed your slow restorative practice today and that you take that time to really tune inward in this winter season. Again, it does not have to be hustle all the time. Remember to take that time to align with yourself, to reflect on the year so that you can start the new year with renewed energy and a sense of excitement. So I cannot wait to meet you back on your mats in 2024. And I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season. I'll meet you on your mat next time. Bye.